So Dr. Javed is the technical and execution lead at Intel India currently. He has more than 12 years of experience in design, layout, and characterization of analog circuits. He received his MS and PhD from the celebrated Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore in 2016. He worked on low power integrated instrumentation circuits for sensing applications. In 2015, he founded King Consultants Education to work on design thinking and experiential learning. He also is an advisor guide for many PhD aspirants. From 2016 to 2020, he led the team on high-speed circuits and managed a team of about more than 10 designers at Terminus Circuits Private Limited. And before that, from 2012 to 2016, he was a senior research fellow at IISc working on integrated sensor interfaces. He has more than 20 peer-reviewed journal as well as IEEE conference publications. Dr. Javed is an active speaker and a motivator on the analog circuit design, high-speed interface design, design thinking, entrepreneurship, research methodologies, technical writing, and many other, important things for engineers. He's a senior member of the IEEE and was also inducted into the IEEE Honor Society for Academic Excellence. So with that, welcome, Dr. Javed. We look forward to hearing your talk.
Thank you so much, Professor Ansari. It was very kind of you to read out the complete thing. I thought it should have been a brief one would suffice. Let me share my screen so that we can start the discussion for all. Kindly confirm when you are able to see the screen.
Yes, I can, Dr. Javed. Yes.
So, a very good evening to all the participants, to all the mentees. Hope you had a nice beverage and tiffin, because we are eating up your dinner times. So pardon me for this opt timing. So let's take a big bit. This is my second session on carriers of engineering. So for people who have heard the talk in September, that is think those are the people from the first cohort. I think the second cohort people will love to know more and also gain the same experience, the same I had while delivering the talk to them also. So a quick view of my research for those people who are not aware. So I work as an educationist at heart, and while doing that, I also am a nature admirer and a nature photographer. So I enjoy going to these places, and while observing and while knowing what all things are in nature, you get to learn. And I spend enough time on land, and I spend on aqua water. So while doing these two experiences, you get to play your mind as an engineer or as a problem solver, as a design thinker. On the other side of the spectrum, I give a lot of talks. I'm an invited speaker for more sessions. I volunteer with the IEEE, been with the IEEE for almost over 12 years now. And while doing the same, midway through my PhD, I started becoming an entrepreneur, where I started this company called King Consultants Education, under whose umbrella I deliver all these lectures, despite having a full-time employment in a global company, or a Fortune 5 company, let's say. Let me take you all on a journey to see what's next after BE and BTech that happens, specifically the EC department or the Faculty of Engineering and Electronics and Communication. While doing that, I will tell you what do you have to prepare for to see what is happening next. Let me take the first 10 minutes to discuss some salient features or salient points about education overall. So when you're looking at post-bachelor's, the first thing that everybody looks for is for higher studies, both within our country and outside our country. And within our country, we have three major streams that people go to. Two are higher studies, and the third one is employment. The first one is engineering, which a lot of people are doing. So you have GATE being given for that, and GATE allows you admission into the IITs, IISc, ICERS, and various other higher education institutes like NIT, Triple IT Bangalore, Triple IT Bhopal, and the various Triple ITs in the country, and specific institute like IIST, which is Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology at Trivandrum. GATE further uses the same scores for applying into public sector units. So when you're applying for public sector organizations, where, for example, Hyderabad has a lot of them, especially if you go to the Kanchanbag area or you go for beyond the Shamshabad airport site, you find a stream of lot of agriculture universities. You're seeing a lot of ICAR, that is in the Indian Council for Agriculture Research. Engineering companies are there. We have got Medani, we have got RCI, we've got various DRDO labs. Okay. So these are the many public sector companies which are around there, and you can go for. Next stream of higher education is management. And for management studies, you have got two major exams that are given. One is the CAT, which is taken for all the B schools, all the IIMs of India, and the other private colleges who utilize these courses. Other one is JAM, which is a joint admission exam for management students, specifically conducted for IISc and some of the IITs. So if you know that even IISc and IITs have schools of management or management departments where you can obtain your master's in management degree, you will typically not get an MBA like most other universities. You will get a master's in management, or you will get a PGPM or a postgraduate diploma or postgraduate degree from the CAT. If you understand, even IIMs don't provide an MBA degree. They provide you a PGPM course. The next option that people look at is administration. This is a great field to be, and in administration you have the power to make a change, power to implement, and power to execute some of the things which are extremely public influential. So for that you write your civil services examination or your UPSC exams, and there's another stream specifically for the engineering cadre, which is the Indian Engineering Services or IES. Once you write IES, you go into the engineering positions in railways, public works department, electricity boards of various places in the country. Along with this, now you have the state public service commissions for each state. So each state allows you these countries. So this is the gamut for options that we have within our country. But if you look at outside our country, predominantly we have GRE, which is focused towards education in the US and Canada. And then we have the TOEFL and IELTS. TOEFL is again an English language course which is moved towards mostly consumed or accepted in the United States, or you would say the North America, whereas IELTS is more preferred on the European side as well as on the Southeast Asian countries. So these are the places. And Hyderabad has got the reputation of sending a lot of students to United States for their higher education, and also for countries in the Europe for their higher education. So if you are from the state of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, you would find a lot of people in your community or in your departments who are going abroad for their higher education. Now, let me delve a little more in detail to what are the options of higher studies outside of India. So I've typically focused on the 5 portions where students generally prefer to go. First one is Asia. In Asia, we have West Asia, which is right from Turkey, Jordan, Iran, Iraq areas. Then we have the East Asia, which has Japan, China, South Korea, Taiwan, Macau in the Chinese area. Then you have Singapore and Malaysia in Southeast Asia, Burma, Sri Lanka. So these are all the huge educational hubs which specifically are coming out for the electronics people. right? A lot of IC design, embedded systems, electronics, and happen. Along with that, China is now becoming a great place to do your master's education and also for employment, because the amount of skill level that they have developed in the last few decades, it's been phenomenal, and it's a great place to do work. And specific, if you are students from the computer science departments who are looking at and have interest in working on supercomputing or high performance computing, these are great. China is a great place to be. You should be looking at Peking University, Tsinghua in China. You should be looking at University of Tokyo and Tokyo Institute of Technology, Kyoto University in Japan. You should be looking at NCTU in Taiwan. You've got the Seoul University in Korea. Singapore, you have NTU and NUS. And you can look at Shahryar University in Iran. Turkey has got a lot of universities. Uh, Iraq, the very old and famed departments of uh, agriculture, departments of innovation are there. Then if you look at Israel, you've got Technion, and Tel Aviv has got a lot of universities. So these are all the major universities in the Asia continent which you can give. The next preferred place that everybody goes to are USA and Canada, and I think there is already a lot of mention about USA, where there's the East Coast, the West Coast, the South side, which is Texas and Florida side, and then you have the central US, where you see a lot of very good universities coming up and creating opportunities for higher studies there. Likewise, when you go to Canada, you will find them mostly on the Toronto, Waterloo, and Vancouver sites. These are the universities that you could look for. And when you come across the European Union, this is a massive place and one of the older hubs of education, starting from Eastern Europe, the uh, comprising of France, Portugal, Spain, Germany, and Britain. Britain is kept a little aside because Britain has its own wonderful university setup, from the United Kingdom to Great Britain, all this which contains a lot, which include Ireland and other places. One new hub which is developing great is the Oceania side, where you have New Zealand and Australia. And if you see, there are a lot of universities who are providing great facilities. You should look at Adelaide, you should look at Melbourne, you should look at University of Sydney, University of South Wales, UNSW. Then you should look at Christchurch University from uh, New Zealand. And these are some great places which are coming up, offering a lot of exchange programs and a lot of opportunities outside. So both engineering and management you could go, and these are some wonderful places that you can leverage and try and go in that direction. Now, with regards to employment after doing masters, specifically in the public sector units, here are a list of the Maharatna PSUs and the Navaratna PSUs of Government of India. The Maharatna PSUs are some of the more familiar names that you have, say BHEL, BPCL, Coal, GAIL, HPCL, Indian Oil Corporation, Oil and Gas, Power Grid, Steel Authority, NTPC. If you look at it, majority of the Maharatna PSUs are the oil companies. Next comes your heavy electric, power supply, steel, and gas companies. And NTPC and Coal India are the thermal based plants. So you should see these are the big companies, familiar ones there. Next set are the Navaratna PSUs, and I worked in one of them for 2 years, Bharat Electronics. Along with that, you can see our aircraft manufacturers like Hindustan Aeronautics, engineers, people, Container Corporation of India, where they build all the containers and vessels and shipping vessels, Aluminium Company, NMDC, NLC, or the Neyveli Lignite Corporation, where you have got the power plants, Oil India, Power Finance Corporation, Ispat Nigam, Rural Electrification or REC, Shipping Corporation. So these are the more prominent names after the Maharatnas that people get familiar with. In the next slide, I'm going to show you some of the gems that we have. Hidden gems, I would say, or hidden jewels. There are 74 public sector unit companies of Government of India, which are very less familiar with people. And this is a massive list. So some of the most common words that people would know are BEMEL, BSNL, Airports Authority of India, HLL or Hindustan Life Care Limited, Musgon Dock Shipbuilders, that's in Goa. Then IRCTC, people who have used Indian Railway Catering and Tourism Corporation. The other ones which you should definitely look for are the Fertilizers Limited, people who are working in the sciences areas, Seeds Corporation, Coalfields, ONGC, Railtel Corporation, which deals with the communication needed for railways, then Southeastern Fields, Telecommunication Consultants India Limited, TCIL, where all these communication people go towards broadcast engineering consultants. This is another place where a lot of communication people work. Engineering projects for all the civil and mechanical group of people. HMT International, you have an HMT Indian and HMT International Limited. For people who are interested in film, there's a Film Development Corporation, Rajasthan Electronics and Instruments Limited. This is a massive list. Now, there are many people, me included, who did not know close to 65 out of these 74 in this list. I probably knew about 7 or 8. So when I deep dived and saw what are the opportunities, there are massive opportunities for engineering graduates, and you should definitely look to apply to these. And these are all public sector companies where you have a great opportunity, and you should definitely try. The best part is you could definitely try it after your bachelor's itself. You don't really have to do masters. These have a long waiting time periods, and these are generally come across in the Rozgar publications or the employment news. Look out for those applications there, or look at the central government notifications for these. So it is one thing that I would encourage all the people to apply, because these are jobs that are available pan India, and these are all jobs with a lot of job security. And for people who have been in this COVID and have seen people lose jobs, this is one place where job security is given, and the kind of mental peace that it gives you is phenomenal. And you will definitely work in developing towards the country's development and contributing to the development of the nation in multiple formats. Okay. The next one, which I see is kind of the most direct form of contribution to the Indian Armed Forces. So you could join the Indian Army, Indian Navy, and the Indian Air Force. These are the three armed forces who are now recruiting from the colleges themselves. I do remember in the year 2007, 2008, 2009, in the college which I studied, graduated, we had the Indian Navy and the Indian Air Force come for recruitments and also give information about how you could join the Air Force. The recruitments are on direct selections after the degree, where you would be requested to come for the uh, central exams that is conducted by the defense forces and take it forward. You would join as officers of the Indian Armed Forces, and I would call your attention to look at that smartness and that confidence that each armed officer is having in this photograph. The baggy greens and the whites of the Indian Navy and the blues of the Indian Air Force is phenomenal. Another thing you should definitely try is the Police Academy. I think TSPA, or the Telangana State Police Academy, is centrally located in Hyderabad. You have the Air Force Training Academy at Hyderabad, where you do the pilot training specifically with regards to small aircrafts and helicopters. And Hyderabad is a big center for all defense labs and defense organizations at that place. You should definitely consider one of these places to seek employment or to contribute to the nation. How does it happen? In the Indian Armed Forces, apart from being a direct force, there is a special force specifically for the entry programs for engineers. And they are called through the Staff Selection Board or the SSB. In the Indian Army, you are called for the Corps of Engineers, Corps of Electronics and Mechanical Engineers, and Corps of Signals. So this is specific to the engineering, electronics and electrical engineering. But there are many others for civil, mechanical, and for computer science forces also. In the Indian Air Force, you have the ground force and technical force. You can definitely join the technical force where, though you may not be doing the direct flying, but you're definitely going to be part of the technology that Indian Air Force uses. Similarly, you have the Indian Navy where you can join force in acting as special architects where recruitment happens on the special technical forces and go through. What are the entry schemes for that? You have the Technical Graduate Course or TGC for the Army or the Short Service Commission for the 7 years or 14 years. Next comes the Air Force Common Admission Test AFCAT and the Special Naval Architects entry schemes. Coincidentally, the Air Force Academy headquarters for engineers is just about 5 kilometers from where I stay. So I am just adjacent to the Air Force Academy and the Air Force headquarters in Bangalore, on the north of Bangalore where we are staying. And we definitely see the amount of Air Force officers that come out and the kind of contribution that they do. Specifically, there is something called the Air Force Technical College or AFTC, where you will have this education specifically for the engineers. It's an amazing scheme where you will be not on the flying list, but definitely supporting all the flying squadrons of the Indian Armed Forces. What do they look for in your people? They look for fitness of the physical body, of the mental mind, your social ability, your understanding the emotional nature, and your academic prowess. So you need to show your fitness in these 5 schemes to join the Indian Armed Forces in the technical cadre. Now moving to the private industry, which a lot more people are familiar about. So in the private industry, you have got these 7 bubbles. And starting with the research, these are places where you do a lot of R&D work. So there are a lot of MNC companies like semiconductor companies, AI companies, software companies who do a lot of their research in India, and all their R&D centers. Some of the major outside US R&D centers are there in Bangalore and Hyderabad, and these are great to be working with. They also work in some of the core areas that of research. Uh, these two form the product level research. You will similarly find good lot amount of product software research in these cases. There are many consulting firms who would only do consulting for these research and core companies. And while doing same, you need a regulatory body for the private companies where the regulatory conditions are placed and quality and control is maintained from all the products that is developed in the private sector. Finally comes the most known sector of the private industry, which is a services company, where you have the IT services, BT services, electronic services, VLSI design services. Uh, you have got services in the shipping industry, you've got services in the software, you've got services in the catering sector. There are a huge amount of catering sector where electronic technology is used, software technology is used to maintain. And finally, a lot of these put together deal with the import and export of software, of hardware, of products, of technology, etc. So you have a enormous opportunity in the private industry along with the government industry there. But private industry is well known because the amount of publicity it gets and the amount of effort that the private industry puts in publicizing the works of them. And you would see a lot of them in the social media coming in and giving information. Great. Now, this is the next sector which I personally like, and this is the business and startup community. And this business and startup community is something that you have to work with and develop. You can become an entrepreneur by finding a problem which people are willing to pay for, at least 10, and none of them have to be your relatives and friends. So if yes, then when you go ahead and solve it, that is when you get. Now, if you look at the kind of business models that some of the biggest companies are looking forward, they're all doing work of business aggregators. So they are a service aggregator company or a platform which others can use to either sell their products or sell their services. This is the most common one. Now, what you could do is you could build a company or a startup and provide a service and then latch on to the existing platform and then use your business to build up and scale up. That is for services. And for your products, you can develop a product which somebody would sell. And some of the most common products that we see right now are software products and applications or apps which are seeing a lot of development and a lot of emphasis is being paid. You also have the startup incubators with you who are going to provide the necessary foundational support once you have a product which is worth being supported. So that is called a minimal viable product or MVP. Once you have an MVP, you can build that product and then take it up to the startup incubators who will incubate you, like how a chicken incubates the hen, chicken incubates the egg, where they nurture it, allow them to grow. Incubators also will allow you to nurture you, to grow your company and see that you get the desired help and then progress. So the startup incubators are great. So till now I have told you what are the kind of opportunities and the scope that we have. Now let me give give me a few minutes of your time just to show you what are the important things that we need to take care while preparing for jobs immediately after bachelor's or jobs after the master's program, or how do you prepare for them. Preparation basically starts with a thorough understanding of the basics and the fundamentals. An expectation from somebody who is going to recruit you or interview you is, are you thorough with your basics and fundamentals? And when we say basics and fundamentals, I typically expect or I typically inform people to be thorough in their maths, physics, and the chemistry subjects right from the 11th and 12th or the inter or the PUC level which comes up, because they are the fundamental points based on which your engineering degree or engineering learning is based upon. So having a thorough understanding of what is the basics of physics helps, and you need to be able to go to first principles to understand how and why it is working. So once you know the basic principles, I always say the key areas are math, physics, material study, chemistry, and life sciences. The reasons, see, you might all be familiar with maths, physics, chemistry, and the life sciences or the biology. But why materials? Why materials is now a very important question, because going in future, there are a lot of materials research happening to augment some of the rare earth metals or to augment some of the most popularly used materials and see if you can get viable equivalents of them. For example, in space technology, you would look for a lighter, denser, but a stronger material. For clothing industry, you will also look for lighter, denser, but a stronger material, along with being able to be tougher with a higher tensile strength. When you're doing semiconductors, you need to understand what the kind of materials that are using in processing and how do you take forward. The construction industry is the construction industry is looking for newer materials, for example, in the cement technology, in the brick technology to find out what is the strength. And now when you're working with precast materials, you need precast buildings, you need to understand how the materials can withstand the onslaught of the nature, can withstand rain, water, temperature, extreme things. Another thing you can build is as electronics engineers, if you're working in the IT sector, you see glass facades being used in all places. You can replace those glass with more environmentally friendly material, so that there is more building can breathe and building can remain cool without becoming a greenhouse. So an understanding of all of these is needed while you're working in engineering. There used to be one important subject with everybody studying, but now has been taken off most curriculums. It's called strength of materials. It is a course where you understand what are the common materials that you are using, how is your strength, and how do you use in which applications they are going on. First thing, if you are from the mechanical engineering or the civil engineering or the electrical engineering, or even for that electronics, you need to understand materials. Let me give an example. For the steel industry, when you're working, you need to know at what temperature steel bends and what pressure steel bends to understand what is the stress that it can handle. Likewise, about aluminium and what are the alloys that can be used to strengthen those materials to understand. Similarly, when you're working with civics, you need to understand what is a concrete, what is reinforced concrete, because these are several fundamental things that is based upon simple chemistry. And when you're working with electronics, you need to understand when you're doing electronics engineering, especially with VLSI, you need to understand what silicon works with, what aluminum works at what temperature, copper works at what temperature, what is the current carrying capability, thermal conductivity, thermal dissipative nature. All of these you need to understand in this one. And electronics should definitely work with process variation, PVT, or process voltage and temperature. So these are the conditions you need to go. So anything that you do, you should always have the basics thorough. And the basics are always at our intermediate level or at our pre-college level. Then coming specific to the areas of electronics, here are the basic buckets which every electronics engineer needs to be sure of. Further, you could specialize in any one of them. So the main streams are circuits and systems, signal processing, control systems, microwave communication, analog and digital communication, power electronics, power systems, VLSI, FPGA, embedded systems, etc. Right? These are the core areas, and I will talk about of these a little later.
Dr. Javed,
Yes.
Sorry, pardon my interruption.
Okay.
I just wanted to see if we can also take some questions in the middle from students,
Okay.
because this is very, very informative, and I'm sure students may have some questions for you. So I don't know how you want to do that. I can either, if the students type their questions in the chat, I can, look at it and communicate it to you, or we could do it differently. But given the depth and utility of this information, it might be great to sort of have some questions also in the middle.
Sure. I think I am actually
Dr.
coming
Asif,
to my end of my talk, another 2 slides, where I have covered some
Acha.
FAQ questions based upon my last talk. Yes, okay. Let me finish. Okay. This
Yeah.
non-technical
Sorry
portion,
for the interruption.
I think slide number 22, I will take a break so that I will finish off with the last few questions then. Give me another 4 minutes.
Sure, please.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So another important thing which as a recruiter or as anybody in the industry or academia would really look for from students or from people joining them are the non-technical things. So they need to understand what is your aptitude of how you can gather and understand what is the logical reasoning that you take. You need to be able to give the logical reasoning, because if you are computer science students in the algorithm development, you need to understand logic. You need to be able to be decision makers and see what action to take based on what logic, and coming up with a lot of AI and ML work. AI ML is basically logical reasoning and action and reaction based courses that you would see in a sense. After that, you will need to understand how to interact with people, because when you're working in teams, when you're working in groups, you need to have a clear communication method and learn to interact with them. Finally, comprehension is very important, because when you look at technical documents, right, when you're given a specification, how do you convert a specification to a workable engineering problem statement? That is one thing. And how do you generate a customer requirement, comprehending that and creating that into a problem statement? So these are all things that are expected in the industry, which are come under the comprehension. And pre-C writing. Pre-C writing is a technique where 1,000-word detailed work should be able to be written within 100 words without losing out the core ideas. So this is something that you will call as a leadership angle, where you look at pre-C writing and others. So these are the basic preparation that you'll have to go through while doing engineering or after doing engineering, or when you're doing a higher studies or when you're doing working. These are things you need to cover. So let me take the questions now, Professor Ansari, and then I will see how I can take them forward. And what I will do is I will probably make a list here and see if I can add some of the interesting questions that the people are asking to me today. Please go ahead. Any more questions? If they are written in the chat window, please read them out and I will help answer those questions.
So right now, nobody has really written anything, but
Okay.
that's because I guess I just told them to
That's okay.
write the
Why don't you
quest.
start with something having interacted with so many? I think you will have a very good idea of what would be a nice question to begin with.
Dr. Javed, I'm Basharat here.
Yes.
Many of our students are from UP and around Lucknow.
Okay.
So I think if you can mention to them about the opportunities available around Lucknow and in North India, that is one point. And then second, the students, those of you who are looking for jobs immediately after doing your degree, I think Dr. Javed has given you excellent presentation, made you aware of opportunities available, hundreds and thousands of opportunities available, and also what are the prerequisites for that, how you should prepare, and where are all they. I think you need to ask him questions and so that you can chart out your future. Don't sit quiet. Please ask him whatever you want to ask.
Thank you. Okay, nice to know that there are a lot of students from UP and Lucknow. You will be surprised that the amount of opportunities present in the Lucknow and Kanpur belt that not many people in South India know, and unfortunately, not many people in UP itself know. The amount of technology companies that are coming up in these capitals of UP and the industrial. For example, Kanpur or Kaunpur, as in the pre-independence era was, is actually an industrial hub for mechanical stuff and also for leather in India. The amount of leather industry, the chemical engineering people, the technology, the amount of work is phenomenal right now. And despite the political issues happening in these two cities or in these areas, the amount of impact or importance given to technology and for digital marketing technology is enormous in UP. For example, IIM Lucknow has now started an incubator for themselves, and they are incubating a lot of companies. A lot of technology companies are coming up, a lot of digital marketing companies are coming up, a lot of unique proposition companies are coming up, and they are looking for bright and sharp candidates. So if you're definitely from those areas, definitely visit the IIM Lucknow webpage, go to the IIT Kanpur website. IIT Kanpur has got phenomenal opportunities. The innovation and development that is happening there, you should look it up. Kindly look it up. The amount of positions that are opening up is huge, and the ecosystem is building up. Great positions for masters. See, there is NITs there. There is huge, and if people from those belts are not aware of these opportunities, kindly go look up the websites. And if you still do not understand and follow, do sync up to me. I will try and set up one session where we will go through all the opportunities that are present in the entire UP, Bihar, Jharkhand belt. There's no dearth of opportunities. It's probably awareness is not there, and but for people who are aware are getting jobs in the blink of an eye.
So, Javed Saab, there is a question here
Yeah.
from my mentee actually, Vineet. So Vineet asks this question, sir, is there any good company in Lucknow for internship in the last semester? What is the selection procedure for internship? So I think the important point here that Vineet has raised is about internships in general. So Vineet is doing his MCA from Integral University. And so anything in particular about how to get internships, especially around that area would be, very, very valuable to know.
Okay. I have a different approach to internships outside of Bangalore, Kochi, Hyderabad, Bombay, and Delhi. Outside of these places, my internship ways are very different. The way I look at is, what is the value that you can provide to a company during your internship, right? That is what I will see. If I do not see a value for you, then what is the point of me providing an internship for you, right? This is something which I really need to, I generally ask people, say, why are you not doing this? You understand? Another thing that I would look to ask is now, instead of doing an internship where you do, why don't you do a part-time job? Go to a soft company which needs your MCA knowledge to be utilized, build a product for them, give it, and come back. That's a freelance job. Rather than you looking for an internship, I would propose it this way: go looking for jobs as an intern. Because rather than go looking as a freelance person, say I will help solve this problem. If you have any problem, share your problem, I will solve it, you pay me money for that problem. That is nothing better than getting an internship. There's nothing better getting than a freelance job rather than an internship, because freelance is valued much higher than an internship,
So how do
especially
you
if you're
get
in a,
this, Dr. Javed?
how do I get this? The first thing is there is fortunately or unfortunately, the people of UP and Bihar are extremely well networked. There is no depth of information. Frankly, people in South India have a much smaller network, but the people who are coming from the northern belt or around the Ganges River have a very good networking belt. So all you have to do is put a word of mouth, pass it on, saying, "I am willing to solve a particular problem, and why don't you reach out to me for solving it?" If you do it alone, it typically doesn't happen. But if you have a team, if a team of 10 or 20 people say there are places, a lot of these companies will come looking for you. I have tried this at the IIT Kanpur level. Yes, they might have come with the IIT Kanpur tag. The master students who did, they would have come with that tag. But even if you are from outside, for example, the easiest way I would ask is, if you are working in a particular, if you're studying in a particular institute, there is generally some project that your administration department needs, and they are hiring somebody from outside to do it. Why don't you go and say, if there is a problem, let us solve it, we students of this campus? I am not sure. I'll be pretty sure that these colleges will definitely allow you to take a shot at it. That's a very good scheme that you could do. Try and implement some of these schemes within your colleges. So I don't know why people don't do projects within their colleges. Implement something and hand it over to them. Build a small product. If you're doing, see, you're doing a video recording, find a video recording for system for your college. CCTV monitoring you want to do, okay. Now the CCTV monitor is recorded, but you can do background processing on them. For example, let me give you. You can find out how many people are passing per hour, or when is the density of maximum people passing in front of the camera. You can build that data, and over a period of say 3 months or 4 months or 6 months, that data generated will give information to the college also, that there are certain pockets of time when students are moving around or faculty members are moving around. What is the activity they are doing? That is one thing you can do. It's more like a vigilance activity. This is one, or a security scheme. Second, you can use that same data to identify certain miscreants in the campus. Or you can find out if there are unknown people entering the campus. See, typically everybody is having a badge around their neck. But if you find somebody who is not having a badge, that can alert the security system, say, hey, there's somebody there. You don't need a security guard station. See, the moment you see that in a CCTV camera, you can write a program. Anybody without a badge, focus in on them, zoom in, take a photograph, see if it matches the database. If it is a student, then yes, you can identify the student. If not, identify and say, what is that? So these are the kind of projects on a security level anybody could do. It is just that you just need to work within your colleges. So this is the way. This might sound very unrealistic for a lot of people, but it works. But on a much simpler scale, app building is done. But next, what you can do is, when you're working with internships, people have a lot of people say you can reach out to Internshala. I have not had such positive feedback from majority people that I've spoken to. It's morely on the 50-50 basis. 50% have had a good experience, other 50 have not from Internshala. What I would tell is, instead of interning them, my way of looking at is, just don't get stuck with Internshala. Look out for other internship positions, or ask for startups who are in your area. Try and reach out to them, because they are the only people. Startups are basically risk-taking people. They are doing some calculated risks in opening up their companies and working on, and they are the only people who would take that calculated risk to offer you an internship and if they find you, might convert into a job.
So Javed Saab, just to sort of, so you said startups, and I think that's a great idea.
Mhm.
So the question is, how do we figure out, where these startups are? Are there any databases in India about startups?
There are, the best place to look for the startups is the startup incubators. Okay, for example, if you are in Hyderabad, you should look at the TIE, the Indus Engineers tie-up in Hyderabad. They have incubated some. Other place incubations are happening is the Triple IT campus in Gachibowli. The other place you can look for is the ISB campus where there are management consulting companies located. If you are either in the Sangareddy area, you can look at IIT Hyderabad campus where test beds or internships are happening or startups are being incubated. So this is Hyderabad centric. If you're looking at Bangalore, IAC has a lot of hostels available. IIM Bangalore houses the NS Raghavan Center for Entrepreneurship and Learning, NSR Cell. Triple IT Bangalore has got an Society and Innovation Development Center, which houses a lot of these companies. So the starting points that you need to go are, first one is the national institutes where they have startups being incubated. Second, look for the CII, or Confederation of Indian Industries supported startups. So they will have another database. Third database you can look for is the Google 10,000 startups platform. Fourth one you can look for is the Telangana government and Andhra Pradesh government uh, certified or recognized startups in the SME, or look up the Ministry of Small and Medium Scale Enterprises, MSME, who have a list of all the startups under them who are valid and who can give you the recognition of doing good startups. So that is MSME. So there are a lot of these avenues where you can look for where startups are placed. Another thing you can go is go to all the IT hub places. For example, there might be places where there are co-working spaces, right? Wherever you go to the co-working spaces housed in the cities, most of these co-working spaces have multiple startups under one roof. So each cubicle technically might be a startup. So you can just drop in and give a pitch to some of them, and some of them might offer you a position. So in Bangalore, we have about 10, 15 co-working spaces, WeWorks or Beehive. These are some of the complexes which hold them. I did find something similar in my recent visit to, there's one in Madhapur I found one in Mindspace. I found one at Gachibowli after the Triple ITB Triple ITH campus there. So there are these places. So these are the places where you should definitely go and look for.
Javed
Typically
Saab,
online you can look for them.
yeah. So, I mean, I think a small request once we are done with this particular talk, if you can just, give a list of, these are all very, very valuable tips that you have given,
Yeah.
especially, where to look for startups. So we should do that. There are a couple of other questions in the chat. So if you.
I will take them up once I finish this and a few more. I'm just going to go
Sure.
to 2 slides majorly. So what are the key skills that you all need to crack placement interviews? If you look at it, first one is communication skill. Second, problem solving skill. Third, being a team player. Fourth, leadership. Fifth, honesty. Sixth, openness to learning. And if you pay close attention to all these 6 points, there is no technical knowledge requirement anywhere. Technical knowledge is like basic gate opening. You have the technical knowledge, a gate opens for you. But if you need to go step by step, achieve placement, you need to have these 6 items. So these are the preparations that you have to do along with having your basic technical skills. So the understanding is technical skills need to be is a given. You need to have them with you irrespective of what is there. And what are the key technical skills that are expected? First and foremost is the fundamental knowledge. Second, they will look for if you have had any hands-on prototyping effect. Third, I would say the ability to read technical articles, data sheets, application notes, and gather information from them and present it. Third, you should have worked in a collaborative project development. See, there is a reason why in the undergraduate times they ask you to work don't ask you to work individually, but ask you to work in a team of 2 to 4 and see that, because that shows builds your nature of collaborative project development, and to see what are the responsibilities you can share, how do you own things, what do you own up and develop. There are a lot of students who come up to me and ask, sir, I want to do my project alone. I said, see, now is not the place where you're doing individual projects. You need to understand the ability to work on collaborative projects. And because as you go into the industry, you will definitely be working in team sizes of 6 to 50 in any case. And you need to be able to communicate and collaborate and share information as a man. Next, I say that every engineering graduate should know some amount of programming skills, specifically the C and C++ basics, because that gives you the basic syntax information of all the subjects that you have. Once you know C and C++, you can easily apply the syntax knowledge and go ahead. And finally, the core knowledge areas that you are looking at. So once you have these core knowledge areas, you can start working on them. Okay, so here are 3 questions that came up in my last talk with CITI. First one is, are we having opportunities in private industry as a core engineer soon after completing our undergraduate degree? The answer is yes. There are a lot of them, but you need to be, there is a massive competition for it. So you need to be exceptionally good in your technical skills for the private industries to hire you at undergrad level. Otherwise, you do a 2-year master's program where you try and master at least 1 or 2 subjects, then you are technically savvy enough for the private industries to hire you. Second question, I think I already discussed a little bit on internships. And third one, I often get this question, especially from the students who have done diploma and then they convert to their electronics and communication subjects after the second year. And those are the guys who are technically savvy, but are not so technically savvy in the communication skills and others. So you folks should really gear up, and then you can definitely go head to heads with some of the brilliant minds in the world. How do you choose your specialization? So this is a question typically for the bachelor students who are going to do their masters in India or abroad. See, there are 2 things that you need to consider. One, what is the job market? 2, what is the university training that is going to provide you in the master's program? So, and both of these are interrelated. Depending upon what is the industry, sometimes you might see some of the good courses close by. Let me give you an example. If you're planning to do your master's program in the East Coast, with East Coast of the US, I would say the universities of Boston, Tufts, Harvard, Columbia University, Princeton, Purdue. These are all great universities, but if you look at the companies that have started next to them, that shows what is more converting. For example, if you look at Boston ecosystem and Harvard ecosystem, you would find a lot of biomedical companies, you will find a lot of IT related robotics companies in the Boston segment. Analog devices, Boston robotics, there are a lot of things there, mechatronics works are there. If you go towards the Harvard side, that means you just cross the Charles River and go to that side. At Harvard, you will find a lot of management consulting companies, law firms coming up, all of that. You go towards Purdue or you go towards Princeton universities or GetTech, you will find a lot of these computer science related companies or startups who are coming up, and then they are either jumping towards the Bay Area or to the eastern side. So you will generally see that choosing that is based upon the job market. Third one is something like what I did to do it based upon your passion. Circuit design was my passion, so I just went ahead, irrespective of what is the specialization or the job market, wanted to do circuit design and excel in that. Because once you excel in that, the jobs come looking for you, and you will be in a much favorable position. Okay, so now let me take some more questions before I talk to you about some of the courses that I offer online and online resources for you all. So I will now stop sharing and take many more questions that the students will ask now.
Sure. So, Dr. Javed, there is one question on, so I think this is something that you probably answered, and so you don't have to, which is, can you share with us about online jobs such as content writing, etc. through Intershala. Is it useful? Is the first question. Then there are a bunch of
Yeah, I will answer. So, content writing, technical communication.
just 1 second. I'm just trying to see. There's some background noise. Students who are unmuted, please can you mute yourselves? Yes, J. Dr. Sam.
So, for example, people who are working on content writing or technical writing courses, or there are a lot of science communication writing which is opened up. So, these are the opportunities where people who have a very good flair for the English language, who can communicate complex ideas with simple sentence structures while maintaining the flow of the study. These people are in high demand because you would see a lot of science communication journals have come up, which are non-academic. For example, the scientific articles that people write, articles for newspapers that you write, articles you write for magazines, research articles or white papers. There's a huge network. But these are extremely specific jobs. You might say you might have about 50, 60 jobs for the entire country. But these are definitely good, and these are there. In fact, I used to volunteer to one of those science writing companies in Bangalore, where they only wanted someone who understands the technology, what is being done at IISc, and convert that into simple language for the full-time scientific writers to pick it up and then do their job. So my job as a technical writer or technical communicator was convert the complex knowledge into simple things with analogies. The moment analogy is given, the scientific writer who may not have an engineering technical background, but might be definitely somebody with a bachelor's or master's in science degree who can write well, they will pick up that knowledge, apply their understanding, and then write it forward. So content writing is actually a great stuff. See, you can write it for online content. So, for example, people are writing tech articles or reviews of particular jobs, etc. Definitely can use these. But like you asked the question, you are not necessarily going through Internshala. You could publicize yourself, but for people to recognize you, you need to write one or two articles, and that will act like a CV or a resume which you can take forward and share with the people who are looking to employ you. And these kind of jobs are in abundance in freelance, especially if you're trying for jobs in Japan, Singapore, and Germany and Netherlands. These four countries primarily put up a lot of these jobs online for content writing, and they pay you for that. They ask you for a bid, so you need to show them a sample of your work. Then you bid what is the time that you would take and what is the cost that you would ask for. If you win that bid, you will get a certain deadline time to write and get it out. So
Great.
there are a lot of things which consistently done. And if I remember, this was used to be a fad in the United States, say a decade ago, but now it has become quite normal, and you would find a lot of content writers based on this one.
There's another question. There are actually a couple of questions related to ECE, which
Okay.
are very similar. So Sayyada writes, how should I move forward to get in the field of analog digital communications? What are some basic projects that I can do right now? So I guess the focus here is on projects that she can do. And the same question or similar one was repeated by Hamad also.
It is a very simple thing you can do. Uh, any textbook that you take on analog and digital communications, if you look at the last two chapters, these are basically the applications of the technical knowledge that you've applied. You could pick up any of the exercise problems in those last two chapters, which work as well defined problem statements for basic projects, and then you can build them. So these could be the projects either you can do on a breadboard. Say you go to Amirpet and pick up your six, or if you're in Bangalore, you can go to SP Road, pick up these components, pick it up, build circuits, and do that. Or you could do simulation projects on MATLAB or Simulink or any other TensorFlow, any other flows where you're looking at project development and both. This will help you gain a fundamental understanding of the communication basics that are being taught. So that would be the right way to do. And basic projects are basically every exercise problem that the textbook writer has brought out for you are basics, because there's a lot of thought put into it while framing the questions. And if you cover all the questions, say from chapters, apart from chapters 1, 2, 3 might be the basics. So starting from chapter 4 of any technical textbook, if you can solve the questions given in the exercise in the end of the chapter, that itself would be a great basic understanding. I don't think you would need a dedicated project in any way to understand that. That
Okay.
is what. So I have a question from Malik. Shall I go ahead and read that? As a CSE student, when I introspect, I feel that I have ample amount of all the required skills you mentioned, but the core place that I am lacking is technical skills. How should I go about my problem? Can you suggest a few ways to increase my awareness? It's a fantastic question. I really love when a student comes up and says, I have certains, but I don't have some. Wonderful. How do you lack technical skill? Technical skill as a CS student, first thing you need to do is, again, I will go back, know your fundamental subjects. After knowing your fundamental subjects, you need to understand logical reasoning. Okay. After that, you need to build flow charts. You need to understand how the thought flow matters. And now with all these machine learning and AI coming up, your flow chart should not be a serial flow chart where you go step by step. It should be a parallel flow chart so that you can process things, process data faster. So that is something that you can build on developing parallel information processing systems, and read about that. And that will be a great information or supplement for your work in AI ML based projects in the near future, which I would say are not very far off. So you should definitely go again. And the ways to gain awareness is, I would say, there are tons of MOOC courses, massively offered online courses, where you have where you're looking from courses on Coursera, courses on Open OCW from MIT, from Harvard. These are the courses where you offer it for free. You don't have to pay for them, and even if you have for free, you could use it. But mind you, NPTEL in India is one of the largest databases of excellent technical content, which is offered at just 1,000 rupees. It is peanuts compared to $1,000 that you pay in the US or the US universities to get. And these are valid courses. So you should definitely look up NPTEL for the activities that are present. Okay. Hope that answers the question. So I have a question from Shahir, if I'm pronouncing your name right. If I'm good at programming and coding skills and realize that I like creating logics algorithms, then what are the job opportunities which I can take up after my undergraduate? Shahid, basically any job in CSA will want you to do logics and algorithms. I don't think there is any computer science job without these two. So you are basically like the bottom of the pyramid job case. Everything needs programming and coding skills and logic and algorithms. Once you know logic and algorithms, now I'll tell you how to climb the pyramid, okay? So that you can become specialized. The way you can specialize is, what do these algorithms do? They can be manual or automated. Try to go to the automated area. So once the automated are taken care of, you can look at how to the automation happens using scripts. So try and learning how to write those scripts. For example, Perl scripts, Tcl scripts, R scripts, etc., Python scripts, etc. So these are all the scripts that you use for automation. Once you use automation, you give it to system development where the system runs in the background on its own. It doesn't need any intervention. It looks for data on its own, gives you the outputs, refines the data, which is called a machine learning. So you use that stage and go forward. So as you go upwards to the pyramid with your specializations going up, you will go up. See, notice in my answer, I have not told that you need a specialized tool knowledge for doing all of this. In fact, you will need to know multiple programming languages to utilize the benefits of all and build a very convergent and a very clear information for that. So do look out on that, Shahir. Okay, doesn't matter that you are an EC student and not a CS student. All you have to do is, I would say you should have the skill of analyzing things, then writing a logic and building an algorithm. And it helps if you have a hardware understanding of how these things, because end of the day, no matter what coding you do, they will all need to run on a processor, right? So no matter what coding you do or what software coding happens, final thing runs on a processor or a supercomputer or any computer. So it will be better as an as a hardware person that you know how to break these codes into parallel threads, run it, then converge it, and then rerun it by opening them up and giving them back. So that logic and understanding should be great, useful to you, and it should be easy in that way. I didn't know how the 1 hour passed while talking. So
In fact, actually, we are at 1 hour, 15 minutes. If the students have any other questions, please type them now so that we can address, Dr. Javed can address it. So.
I think, Asim, we should invite Dr. Javed once again. We should have all engineering branches students listening to him, because his half the talk was covering all branches, opportunities for all branches. So I think we should trouble him if we can spare time for our boys.
So this is the cost of being good, you are saying, you know.
What, Muttasim, what do you feel?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. This talk was very insightful for pretty much any engineering student, I would say, and especially the early section where Dr. Javed outlined all of the different industries that is not usually obvious to many of the students. So I would say yes.
In fact, many of the students are looking for a job, Muttasim, after completing the degree, and they are desperate to get a job.
Right.
They are aware of all these avenues that are open to them and opportunities. I'm sure they can make use of it. And one word for Mr. Ali Mir. We have been talking about communication skills. I think that's what Dr. Javed is saying.
oh, please believe me, when I go looking to hire people in my current company or in my previous company, technical skills are a given that is expected to have. So beyond a certain stage in the interview, we are not looking at technical skills. We are looking at how you clearly identify the problem statement, give a solution. We don't want you to solve it. We want you to provide a solution space. We just want to understand how your mind thinks while solving something. So, sorry to say, but 95% of the people who have interviewed in the last half a decade, everybody is very good technically, but majority don't have, I would say almost all don't have effective communication skills to even communicate what they have. I'm not saying you need to communicate in English. I'm not asking your fluency with English. I'm simply saying people don't have the ability to break down something complex and talk in simple words. They go behind jargon to communicate, but no, I don't want jargon. And even I have had interviews where I have taken people who are not English when they have had interviews in Telugu, I've had interviews in Tamil, I've had interviews in Kannada, I've had interviews in Hindi. There was one person from Jharkhand who had come up who had an interview in Bhojpuri also. So even if you do it in various languages also, the communication ability is lacking. So I somehow feel that effort should be given on learning soft skills rather than this. If you remember, sir, I think when even before me, probably say 2 decades before anybody who has studied engineering, there used to be something called a finishing school program for about 3 months in most engineering colleges, which helped build this. That component is lost in the current colleges. And frankly, that was the intent for me to start my company to fill that void again. And it is a great thing that people are looking forward. And I hope this cohort tries to fill that gap so that they get a lot of benefit from all the amount of effort that the CITI Foundation is putting in curating this, rather than just creating internships or jobs. Because I have a personal belief that anybody who can communicate will get a job. Forget about his technical skills. If you can speak well, or if you can make people speak well, you will definitely get a job. I used to be a person on the other side who was not so good in communication, or rather was not able to concisely communicate. I used to communicate but in a larger scale. But the moment you started having a concise communication, or doing some technical discussion where you have a technical communication, things fall in place automatic. People see the clarity of thought and they will hire you for that clarity. Because see, right now, there are enough companies who don't mind training you after they find the right candidate. So I feel Professor Ansari is as a faculty, he would might agree or disagree to what I say, but this is just insights that I have for the people. Don't worry.
In fact, Dr. Javed, Dr. Javed, I completely agree with what you are saying. I think it is absolutely essential for people to be able to sort of communicate well. In fact, as you yourselves mentioned, the technical skills just get you into the door, but how you progress in the organization, your progress depends definitely on soft skills. And so that's why the emphasis on soft skills in this mentoring program is there.
True. And I really like that. And I hope there's one important thing that I would like to highlight, which is found commonly among all students. The Indian education system encourages you not to ask questions to your faculty, but the moment you graduate, the industry asks you first to ask questions and understand thoroughly. So the culture, I think that all students I would ask you is learn to ask questions, because the more you ask, the better clarity you get, and the opposite person also gets an information about what it is. Now, there is a flip side that till you keep your mouth closed, you might be perceived intelligent, but the moment you ask a question, you might say, hey, this person is not so. There's a risk of doing that, but it is always better to ask questions so that you at least learn from asking questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, very insightful, actually.
Thank you. If there are,
So
do you have any more questions, or I will take a break from all of you.
I think we should wind up. There are no more questions. Unless any of the mentors want to make any comment.
I would like to hear some feedback, because I always take feedback, good or bad. I want at least 5 mentees to take 1 minute and tell me what they learned, and other mentors to critique my talk today and give their feedback after the mentees speak. So let me see if mentees come up and utilize the stage, because this is another leadership skill that I want to see how many want to utilize the opportunity.
They have to unmute and speak then.
Unmute and speak, yes.
You can speak in English or in Urdu or Hindi or whatever language you
Any
prefer.
language. I think most of us cover the Indian languages by large. So let me at least hear my mentees. Have they joined? Have they left? Okay, I don't see there. There is one. Let's see if they courage pull their buckles up and then go ahead and ask the question. Let's see. This is something that needs to change. When given an opportunity, you grab it. Opportunity doesn't knock twice.
Yes, I would encourage, what is the harm, right? I mean, just unmute yourselves and, whatever you want to say, just say it.
Sayyada, please.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Hamad is here. Okay, Hamad,
Ahmad,
yes.
yes. Okay.
Somebody was there. But...
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Yes, sir. I'm Hamad.
Yes, Ahmad.
Sir, the talk today was really great, and like the companies you shared around 60 to 75 companies, that was really good because I just knew about 10 to 12 companies in that, and all the things, the questions you answered were really great.
Thank you, Ahmad. Thank you for speaking up. Can I hear from Barira?
Hello, sir. This is Malik.
Hello, Malik.
I hope I'm audible. I'm not sure
Yes,
about my
you are.
quality here.
That's okay. You're audible.
I'm a CSE student, but I decided to join this session. Looking for just even a hint of just even a small slide, a small a tip or an advice that I could carry on. And really, this session was wonderful, and a lot of insights were shared. Really, and I mean, I was making notes throughout the session, and yeah, and as I asked about the technical skills on where I have to work on, and surely, sir, I'll look more into it. And yeah, as I said, I have a lot to work on the technical part of my journey. I'm even though nobody has actually externally complimented me on my soft skills recently, but I believe that I can do fair enough in that. And yet the technical side is that I have to work on it. I'm just really thankful. I'm just really grateful for this session.
That's a good self-awareness. That's a good starting point to have and build up from there.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Nice talking to you.
Hello, sir. It's Shahid here.
Hi, Shahid. Please go ahead.
Thanks a lot, sir, for this session. I really enjoyed this. And, sir, yes, sir, today I actually learned like the soft skills, like a friend of mine said just now, that those are also important along with technical. And I usually, actually, sir, I'm an EC student, and I'm kind of like always hesitate regarding my coding skills or programming, that I am a EC student, so I should focus probably on my core subjects. And I focus on them too. Like I'm, I actually focus, but I always like coding, sir. I don't know, like it's effortless. I don't have to put any effort on that. It just comes from inside. I don't know. I actually don't know, but yes, yes, sir. So the things you have told uh, that I should focus upon really motivated me. Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot.
You're most welcome. See, for this is very rare that somebody says coding comes effortlessly to me. Believe me, for people who say that, fundamentally, if I go back in history and see, I would find two things common in them. One, they are good in statistics and probability, or their mind can process it a little better than most of us, including me. I'm not that good at that. But there is another thing is, if you can visualize the flow of information, then is something that you can easily get that. That is something that I really worked on, tried to visualize what are the problems, what are the thought flow, and then coding really becomes effortless. So apart from syntax, if you can get the flow, I think that is sufficient for most of the subjects that you do, most of the courses that are being done, most of the jobs available. That will clear up, open up a lot of opportunities.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Sure.
Okay, I think Sayyada, you had a question, Sayyada. Can you just unmute yourselves and ask?
Assalamualaikum, sir. Sir, I am Sayyeda, and I am very grateful that I have joined the session. I have learned a lot, and one thing I really enjoying that you mentioned the NPTEL courses, because right now I am doing that, and everyone is saying just it's not so valuable, and it just makes your resume good, and that's it. But I am doing that courses, and now I am motivated to do itself, because for the placement and for the jobs and I am very confused to know whether I should pursue the master's degree in electronic, is it worthful or not, and or I go for the jobs. So that is my question, that is it worthful for the electronic students to pursue in the master's degree after BTech?
So I have a two-step answer, which is universally I give without any bias. First thing is, if you are financially constrained or not financially constrained, and you get a public sector job, okay, take it up. If you don't get a public sector job, do a master's and then excel anywhere else possible. Reasons are two. The moment you join in a public sector job, your future degree is only used for promotion, nowhere else, but you will have a very nice job. But if you are going to do your masters and further join again a public sector, no problem. But the knowledge base that you will carry will be great for public sectors or private sector jobs. But the reason I give an unbiased, I would always prefer you all to do your master's degree the moment you finish your undergraduate degree without a break. The reason is you are now in a phase where you can study and absorb. So take your master's degree in one flow, get your master's degree and then settle. It doesn't have to be a technical question. It could be a management degree. It could be any other master's program, but do it. That is helpful. People who are even more focused, go ahead, get your PhD and then enter. You will see the world is very different the moment you do a PhD. And it opens up certain sectors which not many people even know that are available. And PhD degree gives you that confidence. And believe me, see, PhD means, at least in IAC, there is a saying that some students that we follow, you have to be the world-renowned expert for 1 day or 1 hour at least. There should be nobody better than you that hour in the world. So when you become that expert for that 1 day or 1 hour or 1 minute also, that means you have excelled in your area for a very short duration. Believe me, if you can excel, that shows that you have the tenacity, that you have the resolution, you have the patience, you have the perseverance to complete. That is a great non-transferable and transferable skill that you can apply across any activities. That is why you say.
That's wonderful advice, Dr. Javed. Actually, this focus on excellence is absolutely, necessary and important. And I think, I am so grateful to be sitting here and listening to you. And this is a wonderful opportunity for students to sort of, get motivated from you.
Thank you. Thank you. I would definitely have. And you just see, excellence is something that beyond a certain period, people run behind and come looking for you the moment you excel. You will always be ahead of the curve most of the time. And it's a different feeling to have when you are able to see your ideas being implemented in person and really value being added to your field, the ability to contribute is great. So thank you, sir. Thank you, Wasim Saab, for your kind words. And nice. Now I would like to see if there are any other mentors. I would like to get some feedback, because this is like peer feedback. It is something which I can work on.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
This is
Sir,
Barira.
yeah,
Hello, Barira.
yeah. Good evening, sir.
Very good evening.
Sir, it was a very useful and informative session today. Thanks for sharing your point of view in almost all possible topics regarding the career. Now I have a better view on what to focus more on. And all thanks to you, sir. Your detailed explanation really helped us a lot. Thanks. sir.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
My name is Shafiqur Rahman, and this session has been very fruitful because you explained about the soft skills, which basically most of the freshers underestimate during the third year or fourth year. So basically, that was something that I got to learn, and for which I will be looking forward to. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Javed. It was an excellent session, and then you gave very important information to those students who are looking for jobs and also the career. I'm sure we would be tempted to give you trouble time and again and request you to come over and talk to the students. In fact, it's a pity that we invite the other branch students, CSC and IT. There was maybe some communication gap from our side. We thought probably we'll be talking about EC student opportunity for EC students. So sure, next time we will have a special session with you. So thanks once again. Thanks, mentees. Thanks, Dr. Asim. Thanks, everybody. So hope to see you tomorrow again.
Thank you very much. Wonderful session.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nazar. Thank you.
Raza, okay, so I think we should wind up now. Thank you very much once again. It was a pleasure. And so I think, Khalil, you can, wind up the session, please.
I am not the host, sir.
Okay, I don't know who the host is then.
Dr. Javed.
Okay.